Well, it's very interesting. The state of news as an ad platform right now is not very good. In fact, I like to say the news is the news, but the news about news isn't good. And the reason is that advertisers who are concerned about reputational risk and are applying certain brand safety principles have shied away from the news, so much so that in the last 15 years, ending with the dawn of the pandemic, we've seen an 80% decline in advertiser spend in news, particularly at the local level. And that has resulted in a 50% decline, according to the US Bureau of Labor Statistics, in people working in newsrooms. And so we have less people covering news than 15 years ago by half. And if you think about it, news is much more nuanced. It's much more complex now than it was 15 years ago. 15 years ago, we were just figuring out our smartphones, right? And now we're transacting business on them, and now we've got generative AI that's creating deep fakes that has people very worried about, hey, is this real? And so we need more journalism to defend the truth and uncover the truth and distribute the truth. And in fact, because advertising, which is 95% of the revenue model for most news outlets, has pulled back so much, they're having to cut news bureaus. Vice News recently applied for bankruptcy. BuzzFeed News has been shut down. We saw layoffs at the Wall Street Journal. We saw layoffs at the Washington Post. And it doesn't bode well, particularly the election cycle we're about to enter into.
So this is more of a softball, but how does Adfontes help marketers kind of navigate those valid brand safety issues and concerns and sort of governance concerns around news?
So Adfontes Media's superpower is to actually provide a platform to allow brand marketers to govern how they could come back into news, rating on reliability and bias. Our rating methodology involves taking three people, one self-identified left-leaning, one self-identified centrist, and one self-identified right-leaning, putting them together on a Zoom call to review an article, a video, a podcast. We record them, and they reach consensus. Is this reliable, and at what level? And we have something that we call CART, which is our rating system that rates on about 75 different dimensions that they fill out while they're together. It's right now, it's labor intensive. We have about 70 of these people that do this full time. They've been trained for about 30 hours. Most of them are from academia or journalism. Many are retired, but still have an awful lot of great perspective to offer. And so we think we have the most complete platform insofar as we rate every day, and we rate platforms based on the individual articles. Other people in the space, who are both our allies but also our competitors, they rate annually. And as you know, and a recent example was when Tucker Carlson left Fox News and we took Tucker out of our models, Fox actually moved more to the left and more reliable because the corpus of articles and stories from Tucker Carlson were even less reliable than the platform as a whole. And so we call it next gen rating, in that we're always on, we're near real time. We're doing 1,200 pieces of content a week, and we're scaling towards being able to do that with AI to almost all the news content that will be out there before the first quarter of next year.
I have a two-part question for you. What, in an age of divisive content, news content in particular, what's the financial upside for marketers for sort of getting in there?
The financial upside for marketers is profound, and I say that with more than 30 years as a media buyer. When you're really looking to grow your business, the very first thing you do is say, who am I reaching and where can I find incremental reach? Where can I find what we like to refer to as unduplicated reach? And because news has been more or less abandoned by many advertisers, there are significant audiences to be found there that don't necessarily show up in lifestyle, that don't necessarily show up in sports. I'm a news junkie. News is on in my house virtually every hour of the day. And so to reach me, you're going to have to be in news, right? And the socioeconomic status of the news consumer is exactly what you would think. They have higher household income. They're more likely to travel abroad. They're more likely to own an EV. They're more likely to have postgraduate degrees in the home. These are the folks, when you're selling luxury goods or Even fast-moving consumer goods, financial instruments, they're the ones you want to reach. And they're uniquely concentrated in news, which marketers have moved away from in an overabundance of caution. I was very involved at the dawn of brand safety and suitability. I like to think we did a lot of good in establishing principles and building architecture, but marketers have taken it a bit too far, and they're worried about polarization. They're worried about getting caught in this highly triggered environment. But research overwhelmingly shows that consumers want marketers to show up in news, and they don't penalize news if they're adjacent to an article that might be contentious.
The second part of that question then is, it's maybe a little more philosophical. Is there some kind of moral or societal obligation for advertisers to support news?
The Bill of Rights of the U.S. Constitution calls out clearly the fourth estate, journalism, as the only profession which is vital to the survival of our democracy. Implicit in that is the financial support of journalism, which at that time, and certainly today, was predominantly from advertising. Advertising looked very, very different 250 years ago, but to be sure, there is an obligation for advertisers to continue to support the news, and that obligation extends beyond the Constitution of the United States. It also extends to the very business model that makes them vital and vibrant. If you think about it, the underpinning of the economy is truth. Truth in how I might sell you something, its value, that I will pay. All of those things are built under a moral fabric of an understanding of truth. And I think there are only two professions that are in full-time engagement with defending, protecting, and extolling the truth. They're journalism and academia. And so we owe it to our shareholders to ensure that we're investing in truth, because not only does it drive our economy, it is also the underpinning of our democracy. And we've seen challenges to that in the recent years that have really shaken me to my core in terms of alternative facts, which when I first heard that quote from Kellyanne Conway on the lawn of the White House early in the previous president's tenure, I didn't know what she was talking about. That was 8 years ago. And now, facts are shoppable. Which facts would you like? And so we need to understand that erodes our economy, it erodes our democracy, and really, it erodes our society. Civil discourse has changed. I started my career in Chicago, and you could walk into a bar, sit down to a person next to a person you never met before, start talking about something, and be completely in disagreement and have a pleasant conversation. But now we're triggered. Now the minute somebody says something, we're all kind of feeling the rage of what's happened in the last few years, and it's because we don't have a common understanding of what is truly true. We need to get back to that. If you don't do it for yourself, if you don't do it for your neighbor, do it for your children, your niece, your nephew, whomever it is. We need to leave the world as good a place as we found it, and right now we're in a deficit. And a lot of it has to do with advertisers not fulfilling their obligation to support quality news journalism.